I'll say one thing we're excited about, and John kind of nodded to this in his earlier remarks about our transition from, over the last couple of years being very much a founder-led startup and now growing our team and, being able to decentralize and really have these various specialty groups. We are also, growing into that longer term view as an organization. And so one of the processes that is coming to an end soon is a strategic plan. Having that kind of multi-year focus and as I know, Eric Majors, our founder and executive director, said in his episode that would have aired this summer, is standing on the shoulders of giants. So there has been so much amazing work that has been done, and Seaside Sustainability has grown so much, and we are really poised to look at our next chapter of growth.
You're listening to Relish This, the Purpose Marketing Podcast. Here's your host, Stu Swineford.
Hey everybody, Stu here. My guests today are Ashley Desrosiers and John Russo from Seaside Sustainability. We spoke with their founder earlier in the year, and we wanted to have Ashley and John on to talk about the intersection between marketing and communications. They're doing a really amazing job and have a really cool model at Seaside where they leverage the power of cohorts and these groups of interns that they bring in to help fuel their outreach and everything that they do at Seaside. Our conversation today just is jam-packed with a lot of really great ideas and ways for nonprofits to really thrive, and particularly in that marketing and communications intersection. So I think it's going to be a great episode for you. I'm excited for you to listen to it, and here we go. Ashley and John, how are you guys doing today?
Doing well, thanks, Stu.
Likewise. So happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show. I spoke with the executive director, Eric Majors of Seaside Sustainability, a couple months ago, and his episode is actually going to go live next week. And we're recording this in early May, May the 5th to be precise. So happy Cinco de Mayo, which I guess is not really a big thing down in Mexico, but up here in the States, we celebrate it. I'm really, really pleased to have you both on the show today.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So Seaside Sustainability, you guys are doing some great work in attempting to help clean up our oceans and do some really cool things. And I know that you have a really neat model as well, where you bring on and really train, a host of interns, as opposed to necessarily having, kind of pure volunteers working for the agency. Is that accurate?
Ashley, why don't you take that?
It is. Yes, Stu. So we have an executive director as well as a very dedicated board of directors and community action team who then work and help co-lead the structure for engaging with many of our interns. And our interns are just this fantastic group of individuals, really of all ages and backgrounds. And they help work within a number of functional teams within Seaside Sustainability. And John and I co-lead our marketing and communications team.
Yeah, it's just a great model. I love the idea of being able to bring people into a working system that allows them to kind of get on, hands-on experience with within that organization that they can then take out into the real world or the rest of the world, I guess, to apply those skills as they enter the workforce. So you two are in marketing and communications. So have you separated those two roles, or how do you work together along with this group of interns?
I'll take that. So we originally had the team organized into a single kind of unitary team, but then realized that there were specializations that both Ashley and I brought to the team, but also that we could help to allow the interns to focus in particular areas. So, roughly speaking, the way that it's divided is that around half of the team works under my direction, and it's kind of more operational in focus, making sure that the website continues to be updated, that we have all the tools and technologies that we need, whatever that might be, our email marketing platform and so forth. And my team kind of tends to focus on the more technical aspects and operational aspects, whereas Ashley's portion of the team is really responsible for finding the stories, developing the stories, reporting them, and the writing and content, as well as public relations. So it's kind of split along those two, into those two. But there's a lot of crossover, and there's a lot of work as well.
So, Stu, to pick up on one of the things we talked about working with the interns, and John shared about how there's that overlap. That has been the source of key learnings for us throughout the last 12 to 18 months. Our model continues to evolve, and we are experimenting all of the time. So we have these loose divisions between content and operations, but we very much work in a way such that we have mechanisms for them to collaborate. So even as something as foundational as a every other week team meeting where everyone can be together and hear and learn from one another, to the point of the purpose of the internships, and allowing folks sight into how the other teams are working, and more importantly, how their work complements one another's.
Yeah, that's great. I like the idea of getting people into their role and their bucket, but also allowing the creativity to kind of expand outside of that particular area of influence, perhaps. And it's cool to understand how you guys, or it'd be great to understand rather, how you guys came into this idea of breaking people out into those groups. Was that very intentional, or did you just sort of start to see that was how people were filling their roles?
I guess what I would say is that as we started to, I think this was probably with the second cohort of interns, we realized that that what we had tried previously wasn't quite working for everybody. Some folks were really comfortable kind of switching from one kind of work to another, and others really needed a little more structure than that. So when we started working with the second cohort of students, of interns, we identified kind of areas of specialty and then asked them for their interest and then form teams around them. So, as much as we collaborate on a weekly basis, on a bi-weekly basis at our meetings, as Ashley mentioned, we actually involve them quite a lot in the decision-making about how we're organized. So I think that both helps us to grow as an organization, but it helps them to have a lot of input into the interns, to have a lot of input into how their internship is going to help them, which is really foundational to what we're doing.
That's super. I read something very recently about the idea around kind of reframing how volunteers or interns are kind of looked at in terms of a volunteer organization. And one of the things that I think we see nonprofits struggle with is how engaged those individuals get with the organization, because a lot of times they're given kind of, I guess frivolous might be a good word to use, but if tasks and accountabilities that seem a little bit non-important. And when a nonprofit can kind of take that leap to create an actual job for for their volunteers or their interns in your case, those people tend to really, they jump in the deep end and they really get very engaged with those. Is that something you have found?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is, and I think that's really one of the major secrets to the success of Seaside, that we've evolved into. I think that Eric has probably recognized this. Eric Majors is our executive director and the founder. I think Eric recognized this, and we've been evolving that model over the couple of years that I've been working with the organization, so that we it's a continuous learning opportunity as an organization to find and improve ways of working together. When the pandemic hit and we were 100% virtual, we had already organized into teams that could operate virtually, and we our organization, our part of the organization has interns literally from around the world, and so the ability for them to find something that matters to them and for them to work on it is crucial, and it's something that has really paid off for us.
Ashley, how have you found that to work with your team? Is it very similar to John's experience? Are there is there any advice that you can give to some of the other nonprofit leaders out there who might be struggling with this?
Sure, and I would echo that the seeing this pay off and the continuous evolution has been one of our key learnings. But for me personally, coming from, I spent a little more than a decade in communications and public affairs consulting, and I would argue that anyone in communications is a control freak. Oftentimes we need to be, especially if you're in a client service business. So I think anytime you're representing an organization and your team is putting out content in the world that's representing that organization, it really requires a level of polish and being buttoned up. So for me, especially as we continue to figure out the right ways to work together, part of the journey is figuring out when should you be in the weeds, but then when can you let go? And so just for me, that's been part of my professional growth in my Seaside Sustainability role, but it's also helped our team flourish, and empowering them it has paid off tremendously.
Yeah, it's an interesting process when one moves from that position of doing to this position of guiding. And I've certainly struggled with it in the past. And when I used to work in the corporate world, I bumped up against the idea with a vice president of the company that I was working for at the time, and I don't think at the time I totally didn't get it. I was too young, and I just didn't know what he was trying to say, and then it was coupled with the fact that he didn't say it very eloquently. But there was some project that I needed some help with, and I went to him and I started asking him for some sort of assistance. And he said, "Stu, what you need to understand here is that I don't do anything here." And at the time, in my 30-something-year-old brain, I just totally glitched out and was like, that was the weirdest, most obnoxious thing I've ever heard. But after having kind of, become an entrepreneur and really gone through the challenges of letting go of some of the stuff that I used to do on a daily basis. And now I have, some teammates and people to help me with. It can be an interesting and difficult transition for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I'll relate a similar kind of experience. So I'm retired now, but had a 40-year career in technology. And over the 40 years, the number of technology shifts and approaches to project building changed dramatically from enormous top-down projects to really kind of grassroots, bottom-up organizational structures using Agile and Scrum methodologies. And one of the things that was most difficult and I was at several companies that were transitioning to an Agile approach. One of the most difficult things was getting management to buy into the idea that even if we didn't have a Gantt chart that showed absolutely every move we were going to make, we were going to be able to be successful in rolling, in developing and rolling these things out. And so that kind of prepared me for this more hands-off approach, and got, sort of stewardship approach to leadership. And it's something that I think it has worked pretty well for our organization. I think that, without something else to corrupt their understanding of how things work, the interns that we're working with who tend to be fairly young and college age or shortly thereafter, graduates, they're keen on this. They really like this, and it feels comfortable to them. And given that Ashley and I are among the leadership, I think that at Seaside, we don't have a VP breathing down our neck trying to tell us that this approach is not going to work.
Right.
We try it. We find some issues. We improve on it, and we move on. And I think that one of the things that Eric had said in his conversation with you is that each cohort of interns stands on the shoulders of the one before, and that's really the way to look at it. Right? It's really a nice continuous learning opportunity.
Yeah, it's a really neat structure, and I think Ashley, you said that it was an evolutionary process, and I think maybe John, you would echo that and maybe say iterative as well. But when we can make small changes, it's like tacking that boat. We're not always going directly at the North Star, at the place that we're trying to reach, but we're moving in that general direction and making small adjustments as we go. And it sounds like you've created a pretty successful team kind of framework for that there at Seaside.
Thank you. And I think having the humility to constantly challenge ourselves and say, does this make sense? Do these systems work? Is a very comfortable dynamic that both John and I have with one another, with the team, and then of course, with Eric and the other board members.
Have you formalized that? Is that part of a process that you have, or has it just become something that's so ingrained in how you handle that team dynamic that is just natural?
Some aspects of it have been formalized. Like I think that we were probably among the first teams to encourage or really require this overlap period.
Mm-hmm.
So at the interns work roughly 4 months, but we always have a roughly 2 to 3 week overlap period, so that at the end of one cohort's internship, we've already onboarded the next cohort, and they learn from one another. I think that was something that we pioneered, and is now something that the entire organization does. When we first started this, we didn't have a formal HR department.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have an HR department that's made up of interns, but they've set up the cycles for interviewing and hiring to account for this overlap. So now it really that is one key learning that's really embedded in the process now.
For sure. I think even just some of these materials too, you should see these onboarding materials that our teams have created. I mean, they could put certain corporate onboarding practices to shame. And they're just, I would say our interns can be better oriented than most folks are at a job. It's just, I have been blown away by how comprehensive they are, how thoughtful and deliberative they've been in creating them. And also, this has been an intern-led process too. I think by going through the internship, our interns have said, hey, what do I wish I had when I started? And that's just continued to improve and create more seamless handoffs between intern cohorts.
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic of discussion, because I know that there are a lot of nonprofit leaders out there that struggle with how to manage, whether it's offsite contractors or even bringing on new team members. And one of the things that you hear in business is just how disruptive and costly turnover can be. And businesses out there are and nonprofit organizations are out there trying to solve this problem of how can we keep people longer. But it's really interesting how you have embraced this idea of turnover as part of the system and even kind of the culture there at Seaside, and you've created these systems to take advantage of that turnover, it sounds like.
Well, I do have to couch that and say we're always disappointed when when there's a cohort of interns who are really highly functioning as a team and their internship is about to end. It's there's a tear or two that have been shed around that, but the next cohort comes in and within a couple of weeks they're highly functioning and we're back up and running at full speed. It's really pretty remarkable, really. But there are dips, right? It's not
right.
100% of the time. There are these little dips and valleys that we see as the teams transition. But we recognize that that's going to happen, and we account for it, and and everybody recognizes that. So it's part of the system, it's part of the process, and everybody's comfortable with that now.
One thing that seems to help as well is we have our fellows who are more of kind of intern managers, if you will, and have a more of a senior position within the intern structure. And in the last couple of cohorts, we've had some carryovers. So somebody will complete a traditional internship and then basically stay on another period in an elevated role as a fellow. Okay. That has helped tremendously, creating that type of continuity when possible with the right type of candidate.
Right. And so you said, I think it was when we were talking early before the show, but I believe you said you have 11 people on in the cohorts. Is that accurate, or is it 6 per cohort?
So we have 11 interns currently on our marketing team between the two sub teams, but collectively across the organization right now, I think we have 44.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah, so it's quite a large team, and they're working on every aspect. Like I mentioned, we have a small HR team. We have interns working on development, which is basically fundraising. In our parlance, we call it development, and marine science and education. So they're doing right now COVID-safe projects that are more typically done in person. We're finding projects that can be done outside of that, but they're the more science-oriented ones. We have a tech team, which is kind of a bit of an overlap with the operations team, but it's IT-oriented, and they're in the process of building a sustainability calculator that's based on really, really good scientific research that the marine science team has helped with. And we also have a legislation and activism team, which is beginning to, has been important in some localized legislation around single-use plastic bans, but also now we're expanding outward into other areas. So each of those teams, and there's probably a couple that I've forgotten, but each of those teams has between 4 and 8 interns. The marketing team is a little bit bigger just because we are kind of an engine that keeps some of the other teams operating.
Gotcha. And then roughly 20-ish kind of graduate or have finished up their internship, and 20 stay on, and then there's some overlap with the exits. Is there a pretty consistent flow of people in and out, or are there kind of these graduation events where you have a large group leaving and another large group coming in?
Yeah, it's the latter. It's 44 in and out every cycle, or roughly that, 40 to 50, with some carryovers. As Ashley mentioned, we have, I think it's more or less 3-tier system now, where we have interns. When they first join, they join as an intern. Those who are interested in a leadership role, initially or pretty quickly, can be promoted or announced as a project manager or project leader,
Right.
And then for those who are a little more senior and who have a longer time commitment, they may also be asked to be a fellow or an intern manager. And so that's where we get that longer term carryover. But generally, every 4 months, we have roughly 45 to 50 new interns who join and 45 to 50 who leave with that 2-week overlap.
Okay, so at some point during there, you have about 80 to 90 interns.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, I was just trying to get a feel for how the system worked, because I feel like it's really an interesting model. I'm kind of fascinated by how it works, and I think that some of our listeners would be as well. What are some of the tips that you would have for organizing those teams? Do you, in that 2-week overlap period, is that when things kind of shuffle out and people figure out which division they're going to be working in for their internship, or how does that all work?
Do you want to take that?
Sure. Oftentimes, a lot of that is determined in the interviewing process.
Okay.
So these intern management fellows that we discussed, as well as our HR team, of course, they help with reviewing and selecting candidates for interviews among our applicants. And I know in the episode you recorded with Eric Majors, our executive director and founder, he shared this figure, and I still am just in shock about it every time I hear it. But we have about 45 to 50 applicants for every internship position that we offer.
Yeah.
So it's highly competitive. And as you can imagine, that speaks to the caliber of the interns that are part of our organization.
Well, that's certainly something that's certainly a nice to have for sure, is to have that much interest in your program and all of those great candidates being able to come in and take part of in what you guys are doing.
And so when during the interviewing process, this is also when John and I will often work together, especially between cohorts, to say, okay, what worked well with the last one? Where might we have projects on the horizon where we need some help? So this is where we'll have a pretty specific list of criteria, especially specific to the marketing and communications team, of where we might need a certain type of skill set. And this is where we, even tactically speaking, might supply certain types of interview questions and criteria to the interns who are leading that selection process. So it very much starts from there.
That's really cool. So it's and I'm sure that once people get in, if things aren't working out as well as they had hoped or as well as you had hoped, there's some opportunity to move around within the organization as people kind of get their feet wet as well, or are things pretty well set during that hiring process, for lack of a better word?
Typically things are pretty well set, but there is the opportunity to move. I'm thinking about one of the interns that we had, not the cohort that just finished up, but the one before. She had expressed interest in learning more about. She was initially on the legislation team. She expressed interest in learning more about marketing, so she kind of was on both teams for a while. And then we had a project where we were working on a grant for another team, and because of her legislative experience, and we knew her writing skills, she was really, really helpful on pulling this grant together right around the Christmas, end of year holiday time. So, there's an example of a single intern who, over the course of her stint, which was a little bit longer than typical, but she was on 3 teams, and I may have missed something. It's quite possible she was on another team as well. But that's not uncommon. But equally common, if somebody has a very, very specific skill set that they possess or that they want to develop, they'll also stick on a single team. So that's equally common.
That's awesome. Have you, as you two work together as kind of this co-lead of these very closely knit teams and part of kind of your marketing and communications, what are some of the some of the successes that you've been able to achieve, or things that you've been able to implement to make that run really smoothly?
Do you want to take that, Ashley?
I'm thinking about where to start. John, if you have an initial answer, feel free, but I might need just another second.
So I would start with maybe we have a weekly we meet weekly with our team, and so Ashley and I meet either one week with just the project managers and the fellow who's assigned to our two teams,
mm-hmm.
to the marketing team, and then in between weeks we have an all marketing team meeting. And that, a couple of weeks ago when we had both, when we had the overlap week, that there were 25 faces on the Google Meet screen,
right.
which was pretty interesting. But I think that has been really, really helpful. We do use Google Meet. We also use Zoom occasionally when we need the capabilities that it offers, but we tend to use Google Meet because it meets our needs. The continually being in touch with the team and having that biweekly touch point with the whole team, I think, is really, really crucial to helping everyone stay focused and on task. The other thing that we use a product called Trello to
mm-hmm.
keep track of tasks and managing those tasks. We use kind of a Kanban style approach to the task management for much of it, and we've instituted a couple of interesting little twists there, where because we've got large teams with lots of projects going on and only two boards that we use on marketing, we have a couple of conventions that I think have helped to keep to allow the team to focus during that once every 2 week meeting. And that is we have a special label that we just say agenda item or hot topic or something like that. So we don't have to look across the board and at all 50 or 60 items. We, the person who wants to make sure that gets discussed during the course of the meeting just labels it that way, and then we know which things we need to focus on. So it keeps things moving along.
And I have, now that I've had a moment during John's response, a couple of additions to what he laid out. I would say, too, that we have had a shift since the marketing and communications team of interns has really been formed. And again, this has been evolution over the last 12 to 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
I would say when we first started that larger team structure, often it was John and I running the meetings. It would more agenda driven from our side, and we would talk more. And I see it as the meeting is more successful the less he and I speak. So we have had it such that the interns, who are running the team, they are the ones driving the agenda. We are there really to be sounding boards and to offer guidance as needed.
Well, that's great. It's a lot like my podcast. When I am not talking, it seems to go a lot better. So I appreciate that. That's really cool. And so I've heard you mention Scrums and Agile a couple times, John. Are you basically applying that kind of development process to to marketing and communications? Am I hearing that kind of correctly?
Yes, but don't tell anybody. I deliberately stayed away from kind of labeling things or naming things, but just, here are some practices. Here's some ideas that we can use, take them or leave them. And then we've evolved it over time so that it's not pure Agile, it's not pure Scrum. It's something that's a hybrid. We're not developing software here,
right?
But it's a close analog. There are things that need to be delivered over time, and some aspects of them are complex and some are simple. So this Kanban approach, I think, is a pretty comfortable way. It's easy to understand. It's easy for folks to pick up on as they join the team, and it's lightweight. So I think it's something that it's self-sustaining as a result of that.
Yeah, we've used a variety of different kind of content management, or I'm sorry, project management tools over the years, and Trello is certainly one that we've played with over time, and that Kanban approach does feel comfortable. It's essentially kind of moving things from bucket to bucket. If I'm not mistaken, unless I'm getting my project management
No, that's it
systems.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
exactly. So we've introduced a couple of little nuances into it. We have um, a paused or on hold. So
Mm-hmm.
we were in some cases we were ending up with a lot of things in progress, but not a lot of activity going on. As people were signing up for things, it just they were eager to get things done. But then we realized we had 30 tasks or 30 projects in progress, not all of them being worked on actively. So we've introduced this idea of paused. So it kind of moves back to almost ready to start. As soon as we have some of the other things that are really in progress done, then we'll move those first. So it's an adaptation that we've identified, and it's been pretty helpful.
That's cool. So what's the kind of the team intern responsibility and structure within the marketing group itself? Is are there different areas of expertise within your marketing cohort, I guess, or are people working on a variety of different things?
Sure, I can start to describe, especially more from the content side, and then we'll have John share more about operations. But to give just a kind of quick list of really what's within the content team's purview, largely that is our social media strategy and then the content development across all of our platforms. Overseeing blog posts as well, we have quite a robust pipeline of content for our blog, which launched last summer and has been a really nice way to weigh in on timely topics and again be that content engine for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Our newsletter as well comes out of the content team, and that's often distributed bi-weekly or so, and we have more than 2,000 subscribers, as well as media relations. So we have a very dedicated, small group that really oversees our public relations and relationships with the different reporters who are either hyperlocal and covered Seaside regularly and are our friends, as well as the broader kind of environmental and regionally focused outlets.
And on operations, I'm sorry. And on the operations side, there tend to be specialties into our web platform, which we use Wix to our web platform. We use MailerLite for our email marketing, and so they have expertise in all of the techniques and capabilities of MailerLite, or they develop that, as well as analytics. And just because kind of I have an interest and some skill in the visual realm as well, we have a visuals sub team that scour our library for good-looking video and still images, or find them through external resources, libraries, and so forth, or develop them for ourselves. So we have basically a content library and management system that we built to keep that fresh.
That sounds great. And there's probably a little bit of overlap in terms of web content, unless, John, your team is handling that as well. Is that?
So, yeah. So my team handles the content updates on the site, except for the blog posts. So imagine the other teams at Seaside, especially the marine science team and legislation teams and others. They are actually the creators of some of the content that gets then polished by Ashley's content team, that then get posted on our site in the static areas of the site. But the posting of the blog post is pretty much self-sustaining within the content team.
That's great. So What's on tap for you guys? And this is going to air in early September, I believe. But what's upcoming for this summer and beyond?
John, do you want to start, and then I'll wrap around?
Sure. So one of the constant sources of need with any nonprofit, of course, is funding, and we've tried a number of different things. This year, we're actually going to do our first online auction, and we're just gearing up for that. So I should have mentioned that in addition to sitting on the marketing team, as a board member, I also help out with development. So that this is kind of one of the crossover areas for me, so we're working with a company that that will host our online auction, and so we're just beginning to contact local businesses, focusing on the visitors to Cape Ann, which is quite beautiful area north of Boston, and so we see the overlap with visitors and businesses who serve the visitors to Cape Ann. Our overlap is, we're helping to preserve the beautiful, pristine environment that we have here. We're doing more than that, but to the visitors, that's what's important. And so, we're soliciting donations from hotels and restaurants and tour companies and museums and those kinds of things for that. Now, it won't be successful unless we have a big marketing push. So
Sure.
That's something that's gearing up for probably about 6 weeks from now.
Okay.
I'll have about a 6-week roll into the auction taking place in about 3 months. So beginning of August.
And what system are you using? Because I get this question a lot from nonprofits who are trying to kind of navigate this ongoing virtual space that we're living in. What did you build those auction tools yourselves? Or
No. Okay. We went with an organization called the product is called Bidding for Good,
Okay.
and I think that the overall product is Panorama. I can't remember the name of the company itself, but we just recently signed with them and have just begun kind of building out the auction portion of it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But what we recognized was that they actually had some other interesting tools that will help us, for example, with our main donation page. We've been struggling a little bit to try to get a donation page that has a number of features. Like we wanted the ability to have recurring donations,
Yep.
the ability to have a predetermined donation amount, but a fill-in-the-blank amount, and donations in honor of or in memory of someone. And
Right.
They have a donation page product that allows us to do all of those things, and it's quite easy to use. So we got
that's awesome.
We're I think we're going to be quite happy with this product, and there's a fairly expensive but fair cost to this. So we thought it would be worth the investment to sign up with them.
Nice. And are you using Google ad grants or anything to drive traffic to the auction?
We have not done terribly well at that. We need more information on how to do that.
Yeah, I'm going through that with one of the nonprofits I'm serve on the board and kind of as their communications team, and we're trying to integrate that right now as well. But it's certainly money that's available to help try and drive some traffic, and at least you can get some data out of it as well.
And Stu, I can build on what John started. And I think we should have mentioned this earlier, but I think an important strategic thing we've learned in both our programming and our marketing is that what our community is valuing in terms of the scope, I'll say geographic scope of our news and our messaging. And we found that there is a tremendous value in information that's hyper-local to the North Shore of Boston. So Seaside Sustainability is headquartered in Gloucester, Massachusetts. It's about an hour north of Boston, and there's a pretty tight-knit group of communities. But at the same time, we have really positioned ourselves as a, kind of regional, national, and even sometimes global resource because of our expertise and experience. So John highlighted a program on tap that I would say is, very local to Massachusetts, but at the same time, because of the way we're hosting it, the platform, it has that broader reach to, the other large portion of our community that may not be in the Gloucester Cape Ann area. And so when I think about a couple of other programs we wanted to share with you and listeners today, I'll start with one that is a little more hyper-local, and that is a collaboration with other stakeholders around preserving the health and water quality of a watershed called Tobacco Lake. It's a source of drinking water for a number of towns on the North Shore. And because of our deep relationships in the area, Seaside, especially the chair of our board, Alan McCoy, has really advanced our position as a convener to say, we have a really large network, here is a body of water we all care about, and, how can we all work together, including other local water associations, nonprofits, and even some local politicians to identify some local water quality issues, secure the funding for it, and then really prioritize how to make that happen in the next couple of years.
That's great. And so you're just mobilizing all of these organizations to kind of come together to help with the life and longevity of this particular water source.
Exactly. And secondly, the other big resource that I think is important to note that has its roots in more of our local activations and speaks to Seaside's expertise in advocacy and legislation. So we recently released, in coordination with Earth Day, a single-use plastic ban guide. Okay. And so this is an incredibly comprehensive resource, and it's meant to, be a playbook for aspiring activists, throughout the United States and world to help them propose legislation based on their community's needs.
Okay.
So it's it includes a number of different resources. So really a step-by-step overview for passing a plastic ban, giving information for how to work with the different stakeholders in your community, including businesses, right, who are often resistant maybe to a plastic ban. And so it gives guidance on sustainable alternatives for a variety of single-use items, and then even sample templates, letters, etc., or flyers to help initiate change. And so it's something that we have made been a resource, even going so far as helping draft what a ban could look like and serving it up for some of our local cities and towns. I would share that Rockport, Massachusetts, the neighboring town to Gloucester, where Seaside Sustainability is headquartered, it has one of the most comprehensive single-use plastic bans in the entire country. So we are able to take those learnings and all of that technical expertise in a really nice, simple guide and give it to others.
Well, that is amazing. I think that there are so many people out there who they are activists, but they're wanting to do more, and they're really passionate, but they just don't know where to start. And so having that guide and being, so generous to share it, I think could fuel a lot of really great environmental activism and progress, kind of throughout the country.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for making that available. I'll get a link to that, and we'll post that in the show notes for sure.
Fantastic.
That sounds really, really valuable.
And we're using that as a model for additional legislation and activism in other areas. I think that we recognize that the last place we should be looking is at the end of the pipe, right? We should be moving upstream, and so we're beginning to develop expertise and connections with other organizations, as well as legislators, to help with some other state and regional initiatives around extended producer responsibility, which is the beginning of the pipe. So making the producers of plastics and other recyclable materials take more responsibility for introducing them into the stream. reducing packaging is a better way than trying to clean it up at the end of the pipe. So we're working on that now, but I anticipate that once we develop that expertise, we'll follow a very similar model by making it available for others to follow.
Yeah, it's that do it once and then figure out how to do a search and replace and change plastic ban to. I know this is another place that you guys have a particular interest in terms of sunscreen guides and things like that.
Exactly.
So it's really cool to be able to scale things like that and have one's eyes open for those kinds of opportunities where it's like, well, if this is the process to get legislation for a single-use plastic ban, maybe you just are targeting, grocery bags or whatever. You can just kind of duplicate that document and do some changes to it to make it a viable resource for another environmental cause that you're looking to roll out.
Exactly that.
That's really cool. Yeah, I know that one of the people who they're also 1% for the Planet partners is a company called All Good that makes reef safe sunscreens. So I'm sure that they would be interested in some of that information as Is there anything else that you guys have coming up? Any big new initiatives that you're trying to roll out that you're particularly that have some particular challenges you're trying to overcome?
I'll say one thing we're excited about, and John kind of nodded to this in his earlier remarks about our transition from, over the last couple of years being very much a founder-led startup and now growing our team and, being able to decentralize and really have these various specialty groups. We are also, growing into that longer term view as an organization. And so one of the processes that is coming to an end soon is a strategic plan. Having that kind of multi-year focus and as I know, Eric Majors, our founder and executive director, said in his episode that would have aired this summer, is standing on the shoulders of giants. So there has been so much amazing work that has been done, and Seaside Sustainability has grown so much, and we are really poised to look at our next chapter of growth.
And what process did you guys use to start kind of exploring that idea of longer term planning and thinking? Was there anything in that process that stood out as problematic or helpful or what did you guys go through to get to that planning document that you're about to wrap up?
I'll jump in here and say that we were helped by a friend of our chair who has helped a number of other organizations with similar kind of efforts. And so he kind of led us through the exercises, and there was a sub-team of us who met periodically about twice a month in the evening for a couple of hours, and he would guide us through a series of exercises and then homework sessions offline. And again, we were doing this all last year virtually using Zoom and a couple of other tools, but Miro and Mural being two that we use, kind of similar platforms for that. But it really revolved around kind of finding or refinding what our core mission was, because we had begun to take on some additional projects that we weren't quite sure whether they were sustainable for us, and we wanted to make sure we weren't spreading ourselves too thin. We're a small organization, have large aspirations and lots of energy, but we still can't be everything for everyone. So it really helped us to focus on what our core mission was and to be able to put that in perspective of the things that we would like to do maybe at some point, but we need to put aside for the moment. And really was just helping us to hone that mission and message so that we can continue to grow and thrive. I wanted to say that the little pause that Ashley gave me to recollect my thoughts. I missed a major important project that the team is working on, and I know that Eric mentioned it in his episode, and that's the Green Scholars Program, which probably by the time this episode airs, we will have launched an MVP, minimum viable product of that online version of the Green Scholars Program. And just for recollection, this is a project-based learning curriculum for middle and high school students. It's typically adopted by a teacher or by a school or the entire district, and has between 5 and 20 students per course. And they build and direct and design their own projects, but there's some fundamental curriculum materials that are part of this as well. And so this is another example of how do we make this kind of program available at scale. Previously Eric would do this in person or one-on-one with a school or teachers in a district or at conferences, but we recognize that Eric is a limited resource. So how can we turn that into materials and a process that would allow schools and teachers beyond our normal reach to take advantage of that? And so we're working on building out that curriculum and putting it onto a platform that we can make it available at a much lower cost. And so bringing the cost of delivering that down so that it's literally $100 or $200 a year for a membership to or subscriber to have access to that, and all of the materials and all of the coaching that goes along with that included in that subscription fee. So this is will be a source of sustainable revenue for us, but more importantly, it is it's a curriculum that helps through that delivery of STEM, but also project-based learning in a way that we think is pretty unique and really, really valuable to an audience that would not have been able to have access to it otherwise. So that's something that's launching. We will have our initial launch of that in the fall, and that's something that we're really excited about.
Yeah, that does sound exciting. It feels like there's an opportunity there to not only inspire kind of the next generation of environmental stewards and kids who are going to be doing some great things here for the world, but also get them excited about Seaside Sustainability, and that then potentially they come in and they become interns or grow with your organization as well. So it's just a great kind of feeder program to just the idea of environmental stewardship. I love it.
Yeah, actually, some of the early interns that joined Seaside were former students of Eric's. He had been a teacher for 20 years in the area, right. And so we've had a couple who have been rebounds. We've had 2 or 3 that I'm aware of who did an internship several years ago when they were leaving high school, and now they're in college and have come back to us. So yeah, that absolutely happens, and it's something we're hoping to see more of.
Yeah, that's great. I think that program certainly allows you to to take it to scale for sure, and build out that next round of environmental stewardship.
Yeah, environmental leaders. It was really a way to think about them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I mean, I can't believe we've been chatting for an hour. This is amazing. I've really had a great time talking with the two of you. What's the best way for people to find out more about your organization and learn how they might be able to get involved?
Well, go to our website, sign up for our newsletter. We are www.seasidsustainability.org. So no dashes or extra punctuation in there, but it's still fairly long. Seasidsustainability.org. Sign up for our newsletter. Follow our blogs. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We have and of course Facebook. We have a small but growing number of items up on YouTube and other platforms, but Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are big ones.
Fantastic. And I love having these conversations and talking about all the great things that you and your organization are doing to help the world. But I also really like for people to be able to take action or have something to take away and do after they've listened to the show. If there was one thing that you wanted people to do after listening to our show today, what would you have that be?
Ashley, you go first.
Okay, I will start. My to-do, and just thinking about this as a nonprofit leader, is figure out your sweet spot. We discussed today really a lot about learning for your organization. As you go about doing that, you're always balancing as a small team, staying focused and experimenting with new programs. But I think that's part of the process for just nailing clarity in how your mission comes to life. My husband is a big Grateful Dead fan. And so when I was thinking about today's episode and what I wanted to suggest, I would like to use a Jerry Garcia quote that I think really sums it up best. And he said, "You do not merely want to be considered the best of the best. You want to be considered the only ones that do what you do." And that is at the heart of what we're working towards every day as we grow.
That's awesome. How about you, John?
Wow, I don't know how I could possibly. So I would say be open to trying new things. I mean, I think it's a little trite, but it's certainly how we've been able to manage through the last year. We didn't know what we were facing a little over a year ago. And yet we were able to grow the team and mature the team because we were adaptable. We allowed we allowed things to happen, and we tried new things, and if it didn't work out, we would nip it in the bud and we would move on. But the willingness to embrace that change, I think, was really, really important for us.
Well, I think you guys are doing a great job and clearly have figured a lot of things out that people are struggling with. And I know, as you said before, Ashley, it's an iterative evolutionary process, but just the fact that you are trying those new things and are really, kind of leading the way here in terms of team management and navigating that challenging space and doing some really great things for the world. I'm super, super inspired and would encourage everyone to go check out seasidesustainability.org. And I just want to thank you both again for being on the show today. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having us.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah,
my pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
All right, there you have it. Another great episode of Relish This. Thanks for listening. If you would like to learn more about how to apply the audience engagement cycle to expand your organization's mission, there are two things you can do. Right now, you can go to missionuncomfortablebook.com to download a copy of my book. And while you're there, you can get your purpose-driven marketing score to see where you can unearth some gold for your organization. If you'd like to listen to back episodes of the show or sign up to be a guest, go to relishstudio.com/podcast. That's it for this week. I'll be back next week for another great episode of Relish This.